and then we'll get started. We'll get right into it. We've got some really good material for you tonight. We're going to dispel a whole bunch of myths about home ownership. And as you know, while we're waiting to get started, I would really like to take down any questions that you have about owning a home or about home ownership, and why you joined us for tonight. So if one of you would like to go ahead, and if you can't think of anything, that's okay. Miracle, can you think of any questions that you might have, or why did you come to the seminar tonight?
Well, my realtor, Deborah Spears, she went ahead and shared this link with me, saying it would probably be some good information, and just, it wouldn't hurt to go ahead and attend. So I am here. At the moment, I don't have any questions because I'm here to listen and learn at the moment. I'm sure I'll have some after.
Okay.
But yeah, I'm just here to listen, learn, and be informed.
All right, that's great. Great. And Jody, is there anything in particular that you want to learn tonight?
No, I'm a sponge. I'm open. I want to hear, learn.
Okay. Everything. And what made you want to join us tonight?
I'm very interested in this industry, and I'd love to learn everything I can.
Okay, very good. All right, and then Marie, what do you think? What are your thoughts?
Well, thanks for the invitation. By the way, I just want to learn. I thought the title of your presentation was very interesting, considering right now that many people are, applying for mortgages, not only as individual persons, but more than one person, right? So, or not necessarily married, but related. So I have the feeling it's something similar to that, shared homeownership.
Okay, very good. Okay, and of course, Gina's with me, and Gina is our executive vice president. She's
yes,
my partner in crime, and really glad she's here tonight.
Yes, definitely. And I always love learning more and being a part of Main Street, and just want to support John and everything that he does at Main Street Mortgage. So thank you all for attending.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's go ahead and dive right into it. Let's go ahead and let me share the screen. Well, before I do that, I want to give you a brief background of my story and why I'm in the business and why I think homeownership is so important. And basically, it started when I was about 8 years old, a little bit before my 8th birthday. I walked into the living room, after school, walked into our living room in a home. We had a 2-story home, a lovely home, about 2 blocks from the beach in Santa Cruz, California. And I walked in and I saw all my father's luggage in the living room, asked my mom what was going on. She sat me on her lap and basically said that my father was leaving. And he decided to basically abandon the family. And at that time, I was the youngest, 2 sisters and a brother, and my mother. And about 2 months later, we were in a very ugly yellow station wagon in the driveway with the U-Haul on the back, and we pulled out. And we were headed to a town called San Luis Obispo. My mother wanted to support her family, and so she wanted to go back to school. And there's a college named Cal Poly there, and she was accepted and she wanted to go to school. So we drove to San Luis Obispo, and it's kind of interesting. From ages 8 to 14, we moved 5 times. And the reason why we moved so often is that we could not afford to make the payments on the rent, or we were asked to leave. And then the 5th and final move was into the projects. And yes, there are projects in San Luis Obispo. Some people ask me that. There are government housing, and I'm grateful that we had that, because otherwise we would not have a place to live. And at age 14, that's where I spent most of my teenage years, growing up in government housing and on welfare. And going back a couple of years, my mother was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis. When I was 12, our pastor of our church and the brain surgeon came over to our home and in the living room basically told us that our mother, she had been admitted to the hospital and she was falling a lot and nobody really knew why. And tests came back and showed that she had multiple sclerosis. And so from that time forward, I became a quasi caregiver for her. And then went through the aspects of seeing her disabled. And the thing that made it really challenging is the fact that we moved so many times. And I just decided that renting was not a cool thing to do. And at age 18, at that time, I stood by my mother's bedside and she succumbed to acute leukemia at that time when I was about 18, and she died. And so having gone through that experience, especially growing up in government housing, and the idea that I couldn't put a nail in the wall, I couldn't hang up a picture in my room because we might not get our deposit back. It just infuriated me. And I did not want to have those constraints and those issues. And as a result of that, I am into helping people with homeownership. And I feel that homeownership is a lot deeper than most people give it credit to. We'll talk about that just a little bit. But that'll give you a little bit idea of why I am passionate about homeownership and the kinds of things that homeownership can bring that a lot of people that even own a home don't realize. And that's what's really interesting about it. So I'm going to share my screen with you, and we're going to give you the presentation tonight. And okay, so as we go through this, I believe that there's been a new paradigm shift in housing. I feel very passionate about this. And the paradigm shift is what used to be, or what is occasionally now, is the idea that you want to buy because it's the American dream. Well, I'm here to tell you that I believe that that's true, but there's a lot of people out there that it is not the American dream. In fact, for millennials, my belief is that if I tell a millennial they need to buy a home because it's the American dream, I think that they'll probably give me a hand signal that's not very nice. And I agree with them. And the reason is that when the subprime crisis happened, they were either children that watched their parents lose their house, or they had just graduated from high school, or were just in the throes of college, but they were very early in through the process. And as children or young adults, they saw what happened in the subprime crisis. And so when you talk about this idea of owning a home because it's the American dream, there's a lot of people that don't buy into that anymore. That was a marketing campaign that came out in 1932 in an effort to sell more homes. And it worked. It's been very successful. And I agree with that. I have no issues with it. I just don't think that it connects with people the way that it could. And so what we did is we do a lot of research, and we decided that in addition to the American dream, which is home ownership, we want to support that. We also believe that the new paradigm shift includes the first one on your screen here, which is called transforming lives through home ownership. And transforming lives through home ownership means that your life is different as a result of buying a home and going from renting to buying. Or it even can be for people who own a home but need to get into a better home that fits their occasion and their environment and their needs. Tonight, we're focusing on going from renting to buying as a first-time home buyer. And so when we talk about transforming lives through home ownership, you know, there's studies done that we've done that showed that 50% of you're 50% less likely to get divorced when you own a home. Your children do better in school. In fact, there was a study done that told us that showed that children have less incidences of asthma as a result of owning versus renting. It's also interesting to note that right now, the average net worth, or not the average, but the median net worth of a renter in the United States today is $5,000. The median net worth of a homeowner is $230,000. So it's a 46 times difference between those who rent and those who buy in net median wealth that they have in their home, that they own. And median net wealth is your asset minus your liabilities and what's ever left from your with your assets. And so it's a huge difference. And the thing that's so interesting about it is that our studies show that even though the home payment initially for owning your home is higher than that of renting, at least in some cases, people who own home tend to save more money, even though they make the same income as somebody who rents. It's also interesting to note that 33% of individuals who rent can buy, and most of them don't know it. Now think about that for a minute. Just think about that for a minute. 33%, that's a big number of people who think that they can't buy. And a lot of it comes from the issues that came from the subprime crisis, where people had this myth that they couldn't buy a home based on what happened or what they saw. There was nobody that was not affected during the subprime crisis. There were basically 10 million homes that were foreclosed upon, and that equates to about 35 million individuals in the United States. And at the time period, that was about 10% of the population. And so the ripple effects that happened was massive. And as a result of that, there was a survey done by Fannie Mae not too many years ago that showed that 45%, listen to this very carefully, this is really important, 45% of individuals thought that they needed to have 20% down. In other words, 45% of those who rented believed that they had to have 20% down. Well, if they're going to buy a $300,000 home, or let's say $400,000 home, and they got to have 20% down, that means they have to have $80,000. Well, if I was a first-time home buyer and I had to have $80,000 to buy a home, I would not look any more at home ownership whatsoever. There's no way. I mean, $80,000 cuts out the case. I'm not interested. There's no way I can afford that. Well, the real truth is you need 3%. So now I need $12,000. Well, there's a big difference between $12,000 and $80,000. It just so happens that I can scratch and I can beg and I do whatever I need to do to make sure that I get 12 grand. I can make it happen. And so there's all of these myths that go around buying a home, especially for those individuals that are currently renting, that think that they're out of the market. Even in today's market, with prices going high, there's still a wonderful opportunity to buy, and a lot of people don't know that. So the first aspect is transforming lives through home ownership, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. The next phase in the paradigm shift is the drive to buy. Now, this one I feel very passionate about. We also did some studies on this. And what we found out is that there's a lot of inaccuracies there on what you read about what is the affordability. So like, for instance, let's take California. In California, especially in Southern California, they came out with a survey, and basically they said, well, home affordability, only 22% of the population in California can afford to buy a home. Now, when I hear that, I just cringe at that. But when other people hear that, they're going, oh, okay, that puts me out of the running. I'm not in that 22%. Well, the drive to buy is really interesting, because when somebody decides to buy a home and it kicks in and they commit to it, all of a sudden they ask for raises, they get higher paying jobs, they reduce their debt, they improve their credit. I mean, as soon as they get that information and they get it into their head that they can buy, all of a sudden they get this drive to buy. I mean, when someone tells you only 22% of Californians can buy a home, that's like telling somebody they got 5 weeks to live because they have cancer. It's totally wrong. It's inaccurate. It's not true. Because all of a sudden, when you decide that you want to buy, you get a co-bar, you'll get down payment gift funds. You'll do whatever you can. And we have seen it again and again and again. And Gina and I have gone through this all the time. People call in. The first thing they say is, I know we can't qualify to buy, but here's what we have. We're out Sunday seeing at open houses, and we saw a house we liked. In fact, Gina and I, we had an open house seminar that we did where people could come in to get qualified to buy on the spot, right? Get a pre-approval right on the spot. And Doug and Cindy came in, they sat down and they said, you know, we don't even know why we're here. We know that we can't qualify to buy a home because we were turned down by a major lender. And we went through it, and in 20 minutes, we had them set up to buy a home for $675,000. It happens all the time because they get inaccurate information. And within 60 days, they were in their new dream home. So this drive to buy, once people get it in their heads that they can buy, it transforms their lives. And we talk to our buyers all the time. They've been renting for a long period of time. One individual, he said, when I walked in the house, the first time it was my house, I looked at the walls and said, now these walls are my walls. And if I were to ask you a couple of questions, in fact, let me just ask a couple of questions since we have a little bit more intimate setting tonight. What do you think, why do you think there's such a big transformation when it comes from renting to buying, that comes from owning? I mean, you may not know because you're renting, but what are the things about renting that you can see are things that may be holding you back or that you're not quite comfortable with? Does anybody want to bring that up? Mary Cole or Jody, do you want to say something?
Well, I'm naturally a creative person. And so, you know, there's so many thoughts and ideas and visions that I have. And I like to plan events. And so I feel like now with renting, I have to just jot it down in a journal so I can go back to it when I do become a homeowner. So I feel like it's limiting my creative ability by renting because I don't want to relax and set up and then, you know, someone has the ability to tell me to take it off the wall or change it or don't do that. So
Right.
that's what I'm looking forward to be able to relax and be able to create and entertain. That's
Wow, that's great. Very cool. That's a very powerful reason. That really kicks the drive to buy in quite a bit, I would say, Miracle. That's wonderful.
right.
Okay, good. Thank you. Jody, have you got a thought on that?
Well, it seems as though renting, you would kind of be at the mercy of someone else and just not yourself, under someone else's control. And you could like lose it at any time.
That's a really good point. It's really disheartening. In fact, Gina and I have a mutual friend, a very good friend, where they've been in their rental for 4 or 5 years. They can buy, but they've just decided not to. And then she got a notice. She said, you got to be out within 60 days. You're out. And they had to go through. And I mean, it was just a feeling of saying, you know, we're not as secure as we think we are. And I think that both of those comments are great comments, really good comments. Marie, do you have anything to say on that? Maria?
Yes. Also, well, as you know, I'm a realtor, right? And what I tell my clients and people that I talk about is that having a home or owning a home it means that you are creating wealth, and not only for yourself, because this is something that you may leave as a legacy to your children. So it's also a multi-generational wealth creation.
Okay, good. Wonderful. Thank you. Okay. All right. Then, thank you. Those are great comments. Then we go to homeownership as a sacred trust. Now, this is really important to me because when I say sacred trust, I'm not necessarily saying it in a religious context. It's in the context of saying homeownership is something that's sacred, that if you take care of your home, it will take care of you. And you know, homeownership is when your children may take their first steps, when your teenage son or daughter goes out to the prom date for their first time. There's all of these things that happen in your home. And a lot of times I find that before I really teach clients this principle, they don't really get it. But as soon as they realize that homeownership is something sacred, you tend to want to pay off your home. You tend not to want to take out big loans against it. You tend to want to keep it up. And you want to make it so that it's something, as Maria said, that can be passed down to your generations and to your children as well. So this idea of homeownership is pretty important. Okay, let's go to the next slide. Do anybody have any questions or thoughts before I go to the next slide? Okay, let's go to the next slide. Okay, so 5 critical reasons for home ownership. One is it's a hedge against rising rent. So let's say that we have combined income of $135,000 a year, could be less or more. The amount of the income is not what's important. It's just the idea that whatever that income is that you start when you begin the process of working, you basically have 30 or 35 years. This graph shows that you have 35 years, and you'll notice that the rent, if you rent, it goes, well, their income, this income, $135,000, is based on rising income, and they're making about 3% more a year. So at the end of 30 years, they're going to be making around $220,000 by the time they retire. Okay, everybody with me on that? That's the basic premise. Then you go down to the bottom here, and you'll see that there is the 4552, which is the blue line, and the blue line is owning a home, and the yellow line is renting. So you'll see right away that for about a $675,000 purchase, the total payment is about $4,500 a month. The rent is about $3,200 a month. Now that's in our area. It could be a lot less in other areas. So just kind of learn from the principle here as we go through it. You'll see that in about year 9, there is an inflection point. And at that inflection point, you'll see that all of a sudden the rent payments begin to pass the housing payment. And this is really important. This is a really big deal that a lot of people, especially millennials, don't quite grasp until we really help them with that. Because normally they're not really taught about this and they're not really exposed to it. But the idea is that as this rent inflection point occurs, all of a sudden your rent becomes more money. And as your rent increases, it takes away from, if you can see my pointer here, it takes away from the income that you're receiving or the raises that you're getting. So every time you get a rent increase, it takes away from that income or any kind of discretionary income that you're getting from the fact that you're making more money. And then you'll notice that with a purchase and with a home purchase, the payment stays the same. Now that 4552 actually drops by $200 or $300 because the mortgage insurance drops off. And we'll explain a little bit more about that. Okay, so at the end of 30 years, what happens is that you have, all of a sudden, you have a rent payment that's $9,980, and you have a payment which is $4,552. Now, when we talk about shared home ownership, we're going to cut that in 3s, right? We're going to divide that by 3. So right now, I'm just giving you a very generic idea of what it looks like, just as if somebody was buying their own home. Okay, any questions about that as we go on? Before we go on? Okay. All right, number 2, it's a hedge against rising home prices and interest rates. And so what you have here is you have 2 brothers, and you have brother A and brother B, and they have the same credit, they make the same income, everything is the same for them. And you have brother A and they get a $25,000 gift. And they each have,
in 2 weeks.
what's that? Someone asked a question? Okay. All right. So so brother A says, I'm going to go ahead and buy a house now. And brother B, which is our individual over here, he says, no, I don't want to buy a home because I don't want to pay mortgage insurance. I'm sure you've heard that if you put down less than 20%, you have to pay for mortgage insurance. And mortgage insurance is a insurance policy that you take out when you buy your home that insures against default on the property. So if you were to default on the property, the lender gets money as if it was a 20% down payment. So it really doesn't give you anything in particular, except that it allows you to make it so that you put down a lot less money. And that's a really important deal. Okay, now, so what happens is that brother A says, okay, I'm going to buy now with the 23,000. That's he has 25,000. His outlay is 23,625. And then you have 5 years where brother B says, I'm going to buy in 5 years after I save up the money, which is going to be $164,000. Well, after 5 years, who comes out better? You'll see at the bottom of the screen, the couple or the individual that buys today has more cash in their pocket after 5 years, which is $88,000. Now, that's not the only thing. What happens also is they go on to the next one, and that's your equity and investment. So now what happens is that brother A, his home is now worth $821,000 because we figured that it went up on a conservative basis, 4% a year. Now, what's interesting about that is just last year, home prices went up 19%. So there is a very, obviously prices will go up. This is a conservative estimate. The balance on brother A's mortgage is $592,000. The total equity that he now has, is $228,593. Well, brother B hasn't bought yet. He's in the process of buying. He doesn't have any equity because he hasn't bought his home yet. And so by brother B waiting to buy, the opportunity cost, in other words, the cost of waiting to buy brother B was $316,681. That's a lot of money in a relatively short period of time for deciding not to buy when both brothers had the capability to buy. So there's a really big deal about the idea that it makes sense to buy when you can buy responsibly as soon as you can. Now, again, we're talking about shared home ownership. So all of this is going to be divided by 3 as an example that I will give you. But I just want to give you a taste of the compelling reasons why home ownership is such a big deal. Of course, the third one is equity, wealth, and accumulations. People who own homes tend to save more money, and their median net wealth is higher as a result of saving money and equity accumulation. And then, of course, what's important here is that there was a study done, and this study was really important. It showed, it was from 1997, actually 1999 to 2009, by a Harvard Joint Center for Housing Studies. And they found that at the time that an individual was going to buy their first home, their net income was $8,000, or their net worth. Median net worth was $8,100. A renter's median net worth was $1,500. So the question that I want to ask to Miracle and Maria is, why do you think that the difference between somebody renting and somebody who has the intention to buy, why is the person that has the intention to buy where their net worth is so much higher? Now, understand that the people wanting to buy at $8,100, they haven't bought yet, but their intention is to buy. So my question to you is, why do you think there is such a big difference between the two? Got any thoughts on that at all?
Sorry, John, the question is why the median net worth is higher on owners?
On why the median net worth for somebody who is ready to buy is so much higher than somebody who is just renting and has no desire to buy.
Well, because they are saving, right? That's probably one of the reasons. When you are saving for your down payment, you are very careful with your expenses. And
right. Okay, that's one reason. Okay, good. That's exactly right. Very good. So a study that was done, this study in the Harvard Joint Center for Housing Studies gives us the reason. And here's the reason. Let me read it to you, give you kind of an idea of what this is. They said, even before realizing any returns on the investment in the home itself, in other words, they haven't bought a home yet, the drive to become an owner, which is what I call the drive to buy, results in substantially higher wealth than those who remain renters. Okay, let's skip it goes on here. In the year leading up to buying a home, household wealth increases by an average of 33%, then more than doubles in the first year of owning. Why? Factors that contribute to this jump in wealth include getting married, working more hours, and a slightly higher incidence of inheritance and gifts. And that's where I said the drive to buy becomes so strong that it doesn't matter if people tell you you can't afford it. Wealth continues to increase after the first year by 17% on average annually. So we go back to this example and you can see what happens is that here they start out with 8,100 median net worth, and at the end of 10 years, and this was during the subprime crisis, their net worth was $94,400, whereas those who were renting with no desire to buy had a net wealth of $1,500, and it ended up being $1,100, so they lost $400. It's a really powerful explanation as to why it is so important to think about the idea of owning your home. Now, this next one here, I'll go through very quickly. This is why I'm waiting, I'm waiting for prices to go home. So people talk about trying to time the market. And when we try to time the market, we'll give you an example. The purchase price on this home is $750,000. Loan amount is $600,000. Rate is 4.375. And somebody comes out and says, I'm going to wait to buy a home because I think their prices will go down. So let's pretend that prices do go down. Let's say they go down from 750 to 700. But the problem is that many times the rate will increase. And if the rate increases, you end up paying more interest and your payments are higher over an extended period of time. And so the difference between the two options is that if you wait for the prices to go down, and in that time, if rates rise, you're going to end up paying $90,000 more in interest over the life of the loan. So when people try to time the market, it's not always a good idea. Really what happens is that when you find a home that you like and you can responsibly buy it, you want to definitely go ahead and think about really seriously consider buying the home. Okay, and then of course the number 4 is appreciation. We've talked about that. Prices of homes rise. Sometimes they dip. Sometimes they go down a lot. That's what happened during the subprime crisis. But generally speaking, prices of homes always rise over a period of time. And historically, over the last 30 years, they've gone up 4% per year. Okay. And then in that example, it was an average increase of 11% over the last 5 years. Then we have quality of life. And we've already talked about that. Graduation rates are higher. Children's health is better. Net family wealth is higher. As a result of owning, there is a decrease in children's behavioral problems, reliance on government assistance, lower incidence of asthma for children, and lower incidence of divorce rates for couples. So it's a really big deal when we talk about the critical reasons why it's so important to think about owning a home. Okay, what thoughts or questions do you have on that before we move along? Miracle, did I explain that okay? Do you have questions you need clarifying with?
No,
No,
you did a great job explaining everything. I was wondering, as far as your last question, what was the big difference? But it makes sense as far
Yeah.
as generational wealth and everything going up, and the 17%, the 4% per year. So
yeah,
and I'm sure when you have a home and as a parent, when you're more calm, that trickles down to your children. You're able to be excited and they can, set up and you can cater to their needs a little bit more. So everyone wins.
Exactly. Good point. Good point. Very good. Maria, do you have any thoughts?
No, John, everything is very clear. And I like that you mentioned the benefits of homeownership, which are not only financial, but also is something beyond financial, right? Is happiness.
Yeah. I think Miracle brought up a good point that you're calm. You're in a situation where you're a little bit more centered and grounded, knowing that that home is yours. That's a really good point, Miracle. I'm glad you brought that up. It does definitely provide a much different feeling. In fact, Miracle, it's interesting that you bring that up because you might be interested to know that children who grow up in rentals are 8 to 15% less likely to buy a home than children who grow up in homes that are owned by their parents. And, if you have somebody if you grow up renting, a lot of times you as a child, we know this from experience and from surveys and in our research, is that children will hear things like, well, the toilet's broken, we got to get it fixed, or the landlord raised the rent, so we got to move. All of these forces are forces that are really tough things to handle sometimes, especially for a child. Whereas if they own a home, they're growing up in a home that's owned, then they ask a question like, well, what color do you want your room painted? What can we do to make it more beautiful? What can we do to, make our home a nicer place, or fixing up the yard? And that means a lot. It means a great deal to a child. So Miracle, I think your comment is really well taken. Okay, so now let's get into shared homeownership. We'll spend a few minutes on this and kind of give you an idea of what that is. So what is shared homeownership? Well, what it is an approach to homeownership in which multiple entities come together to buy a home. And so what we do is we really pre-qualify, pre-approve. We call it an ironclad pre-approval, where we'll take people who you want to bring in. So Miracle, that would mean that if you found a friend of yours or an associate or a family member that would like to invest with you, what we do is you come in and you can have as many as 4 people actually buy a home together on a home to live in as a primary residence. And so you have the opportunity then, everybody comes in with their income and it's all pooled together. So all of your income is pulled together, down payment sources are pulled together, and we qualify you based as if you were one entity to qualify for financing. Now, we do have some guidelines, and some guidelines is we like a credit score of 640 or higher. We pull credit, we'll go through and educate you about that. We'll talk about that in just a minute. But the idea is we get you fully approved and then we turn you over to a real estate professional to help you. So let's give you an example. Let's say for a purchase price of $650,000, if you buy this home on your own, you've got to make $95.25 a month. And that's about $110,000 a year, a little bit less, about $110,000. Where shared homeownership, you got to pay $31.75. And this example is based on divided by 3 individuals. Down payment, you'd have to have $32,500. Shared homeownership, you got to come up with $10,833. Total payment, you've got to be able to sustain a payment of $43.53 a month. Shared homeownership is $14.51 a month. And $14.51 is almost less than renting. That is really, that is where the rubber meets the pavement, because most people that are renting are paying anywhere from $1,800 to $2,500 a month. So that's a really big deal. Another example is if it's $750,000 required monthly income, you got to make over $120,000 a year. Shared homeownership, you got to make $35.60. Required down payment is $37.5 if it's your own home, Shared homeownership, you got to come up with 12.5. Total payments 52.33. Instead, it's 17.44. So it's a very big deal to be able to have the idea to share your home and share the ownership of that. We had a gal that did that. She went in with her roommates, bought a home, and after 5 years, now get this is really cool. After 5 years, they did their exit strategy. In other words, they knew beforehand when they agreed to sell what they were going to do, because they each had to go their own separate ways. So they had an agreement, they knew what they were going to do. And as a result of that, when she bought her new home on her own, because her income was now high enough to buy it herself, she got enough equity to pay off all of her student loans and enough money for a new down payment on a home. I mean, it was massive, the type of difference that it can make. So the services that we include, if you want it, we'll offer you a compatibility test, a roommate compatibility test. There's colleges offer this to people who are going to be doing some rooming together. We can do that for you so that you're really confident about the person that you want to bring on to buy the home with you. We're going to talk about coaching for credit, for budgeting, for everything that you need help with to get you on the right track so that you can be in a position to buy, because you may not be ready tonight, but you may be ready in 6 months to a year. And then we can do a lot of coaching as far as compatibility when it comes to home ownership with two people, not just a compatibility test, but we actually have a coach who, if you're interested, will do coaching for you and give you the ground rules and what you need to do to be able to live with another person. And a lot of times you may not really have an issue with it because it's your friend already. And then we have conditions of satisfaction. We'll help you put together an agreement. And that agreement is between all parties so that when one wants to exit, what's going to happen at that time. If somebody wants to sell, then the other party would have first right of refusal to buy out that share, or they may all decide to sell. There's a lot of different things that happen. So we make it very clear that there's no misunderstandings, and it'll be a lot easier to be able to do that. So this idea of shared homeownership is a really big deal, because in most cases, people who take advantage of it will qualify to buy a home and can begin to build equity, irrespective of the fact that they can't buy a home on their own. And we believe it's a model of the future. We think that home prices will continue to rise. We think that they will at some point outstrip people's ability to buy with the single income that they have. And we think that the shared homeownership will open up and give a tremendous opportunity to individuals to own a home that never had that opportunity. So with that, and here's an additional, what we do a little bit different, just as something different, is that we really focus on your preparation. So in getting you ready to buy, we're going to spend a lot of time in the preparation phase, and closing your loan is going to be really easy. That's the way that we operate. Versus the amateur loan officer that only spends about 20% of the time preparing to get your loan ready, and it takes 80% of the time to close your loan. It becomes a traumatic experience. It doesn't have to be that way. It can actually be a pretty easy process. Okay, all right. So thank you so much for coming. I would love to take your questions and comments and some things that you might want to add or any observations. We really appreciate that you take the time to be with us tonight. So Miracle, what are your thoughts, and what questions can we answer for you? Or what are you thinking? What's in your mind? And is this something that you think would be something to look at further?
Yes, I've been looking to purchase a home for about 2 years. It happened. I was working with, I don't know if you know about NACA, but I was working with them. It was quite frustrating. And right before the pandemic hit, I was supposed to submit. And so I've been going through this little dance, this 1-2 step for some time now. So it's kind of frustrating. But when I was sent the link to sent this link from my realtor, it helps a little bit because I did hear your opening story, and it helps me to feel as though you understand, you've been through something similar. So you do understand the importance of being a child as well as a adult being a homeowner. I am looking, my stepdad is supposed to help me with, he's going to be a co-signer on my loan. So this was,
Wonderful.
yeah, something that I thought I would, be able to come to and get some pointers. So I did learn some things. It gave me more hope than I had before. And
Good.
and I will make sure I, thank my realtor for this link. And she said a friend of it gave it to her. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. In fact, if you can, if it's okay with you, I can have Rebecca follow up. We'll send you a book free of charge.
Oh, that's
Book that I wrote. I'll be glad to get that to you, and anything that we can do for you or any additional questions, we would love to answer them for you. That's great to have a co-signer from your dad. That's wonderful.
yeah.
Do you think that do you think that you'll need to include anybody else in that process?
I'm not. I hope I won't. My mom, she's available, but my dad, his credit is pretty good. He's pretty disciplined. So, I just thought it would be best to do it on my own. But I guess in this world you need help, so I need to go ahead and be happy that I do have that help and assistance. So,
Yeah, that's great. Now, did you see my video and play that before you came on tonight?
No, I didn't because I just got home and I ran and logged on.
Okay, good. All right, great. Beautiful. Very good. Okay, Maria, do you have any comments or thoughts?
Well, thank you, John, for such a great presentation. I have attended a few of your presentations, and this was very interesting. And yeah, I mean, this is a fantastic idea for any of those who never thought they would be able probably to buy a house, right, by themselves.
Yeah.
So there is chance, there is hope, especially in California, right? So it's very difficult for many.
Right.
And co-living is something very common in California because of the high rents. So this is a great opportunity for them.
Yeah. Very
Yeah.
cool. Okay, great. And Maricole, if you'd like to, you can leave your phone number here with us, or we can email you and get that information as well. Whichever is going to be easy, so we can get the book to you.
Okay, email is better because it comes right through. So the email is fine. That'll work.
Okay, so we'll email you. I think we have your email, Rebecca.
She can write in the chat.
What's that?
She can write in the chat.
Yeah, Maricole, if you could put that in the chat, that would be great.
Okay.
Yeah, just put in your email there, and we'll go from there. And Gina, do you have any thoughts?
Well, yes, actually, I was going to mention, shared homeownership is such a wonderful opportunity for some people to buy. I actually did it in 2018, and it allowed me to
Gina, are you there?
live in. They've enjoyed it, and I was able to actually 3 years down the road, that person that helped me, I was able to buy them out. So that's always an option as well.
Excellent.
So, but yeah, so there's a wonderful opportunity to buy a home, and it can really help you out if need be.
Yeah. Very cool.
Thank you.
All
Great
right.
job, John. Thank you.
All right.
Nice to
Thank
see
you.
everybody.
Yeah. Okay, very cool. Well, thank you so much for attending today. We are grateful for you and ready to serve you in any way that we possibly can. Let me give you my phone number. My phone number is 805. It's on the cell phone right here, 805-432-2382. All right. Well, thanks so much. And feel free to call myself or Gina or Rebecca, and we will do everything we can to be of assistance. Again, Maricole and Maria, thanks so much for coming. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, John.
All right. Thank you.
All the best.
All right. You too. Bye-bye.
Bye.